Hello everyone again. Welcome to the Drone for Construction Project Management Part 2. My name is Hamlet Reynoso Vanderhorst. I'm a PhD from the University of Wolverhampton in Construction Project Management and Computer Science. And I'm going to keep with the presentation that we have before the last session. We're just going to complete the application of drones for construction. We're gonna do or discuss drones industry, the challenges, and finally the conclusions. So we have the application of material system for construction, which are directly related to the images and 3D models that normally contractor or architects they are looking for. So there are some common mistakes that in the industry they are doing regarding to the drone is how they can quantify the spending that they do in time and in cost of the personnel in order to get a drone. So let me explain you all the workflow in order that we can understand that mistake. So we have a drone that can be a helicopter or quadcopter drone, and it may have a LiDAR, photogrammetry sensors like a camera, or it might have both together. And after they make their data collection, then they're going to be processed. The process can be in a local server, like physical one, or in the cloud, using one of the software that you can see in the video. And after they make that processing moment or time, they're going to produce certain outcomes according to the software that you're willing to operate that outcome. Can be an outcome that can be using Revit, Civil 3D, Navisworks, SketchUp, 3D Max, ArchiCAD, Rhinoceros, and any other type of software. But they're going to depend of what actually are you willing to do with the data. So when you understand the process, then there are two variables. Currently, to operate a drone, we need a person who actually manage the drone, or a person who knows how to program the drone. So based on what we are looking for, then we're going to have different approaches. If we have a person that's going to operate the drone, then we need to have a qualification. So that person may have a theoretical test pass, they may develop operational manual, may do some practice, 6 months to 1 year, according to the UK regulations. In other countries, it's a little bit less restrictive, or they may not have any type of regulation in order to operate drones in that sense. If you have a person that knows how to program the drone, then the drone needs to be certified that the drone actually comply with the requirements of safety and what type of operation you're going to look at. So just be aware of the current law in your country in order to operate a specific type of drones based on the specific type of operation that you're going to carry out. Then the process should be following a brief. So before we operate a drone, we may need to provide a project brief in order that our client or the person who is intending to receive the data knows what are the implications if the drone fails, if the data is not fully captured, and all the necessary details in order to get the full outcome. So we're going to prepare a project brief, exemplify how we're going to use the operation. We may use, for example, software in order to program the drone. We're gonna check the wind conditions, the height, the time. Normally it's very useful to fly the drone between 10 to 2 p.m. in the morning, because that's the time that the sun is in the zenith, so shadows are avoided in that time. But they're going to depend, of course, the type of sensors that you're using and what type of drones are you using. If you're using a lighter drone, then that type of consideration may not be full suitable to consider. And then after we made that description, then we're going to develop the outcome. After we develop the outcome, we need to understand what are the probable applications that outcome may have for our client or for the person intending to be using that. So based on some research carried out during the PhD, we identify like 9 different solutions or applications that a construction organization they may be using the drones, and in which stage they're going to use it. For example, damage quantification in case that we have disaster management situation, crisis management or recovery stage. So in one of those, we may need to make a pre-assessment what actually was in the city or in the construction site that we were operating, and then we're going to make another survey or photogrammetry approach in order to capture what remains based on what we already have. In some countries, you can have access to Google Maps and other 3D sources that they already upload, and then we can make that comparison between what we actually capture and what was already stored in Google or any type of software that they have, a database of what actually was before the disaster. So in other countries that they may not have that access to a previous 3D models, then we can make an assessment into the perspective. We can just make a comparison between how was in 2D before with Google Maps and how was in 3D, in 2D, sorry. And then based on that comparison, then we can use it for insurance purpose, for remodelation purpose, for quantification purpose, in order that to have the certain aids allocated. In any case that you're working for any government or institution that matter, or in order to make policies regarding to construction in specific areas. After a disaster, some governments, what they tend is just to build a mitigation plan for further events. So with the drone, we actually capture the data, how the event distort or damaged that particular area, and what was the main fails that the mitigation risk assessment or process in place of that municipality were not complying in order to avoid the problem that natural event may cause. Can be, for example, materials that we can identify with the drone. Can be also a lack of a specific structural engineer assessment. There are some houses that may be built without any stipulation of structural engineer, so it may happen that case. So based on those assessments that we already obtained from the drone, then we can actually provide the data to make policy regarding to that. We have health and safety, visualization if we want to see the progress. We can make a survey. We're going to provide you some examples. Monitoring in progress, administrative perspective. If we want to have a perspective of how much it may cost to do a specific X or Y Z solution, then with the drone we can capture that data and make the cost analysis effort in that. In urban planning, thermal images, if we want to see a specific area, if they are heat problems or cold problems, then we can manage how we can design that area in order that they can contribute to the thermal environment in that specific space. It means that if we have a heat area or an area that can be hit by heat waves, then we can develop that specifically site with the buildings that they can actually take advantage of that problem with a thermal sensor. And then we have traffic solution. If we have places that are more populated than others, or they have more traffic than others, then we can measure with that with drones. So One of the examples that for survey that it's very useful, this is about warehouse. The owner of the warehouse, they were intended to remodelate the warehouse, so they required to the architect to make a space optimization to put some of the different machineries and other type of equipment that they were looking at. So it was developed some of the control lines of the terrain based on the drone data and simulate how's going to be the terrain model. With that terrain model, then the architect can make some modifications and identify if it was better to move certain buildings or just rearrange them in another way. But however, if you want to keep applying drones in different construction stages, then in feasibility stage is going to be very useful based on the survey aspects, images, context that you can give to your projects, and different type of data that you can actually capture that the visible can be a little bit more complicated to be aware of. If, for example, if you are willing to build in a very jungle area and you don't have awareness what is down the jungle until you get like walking there, with the drone, when you make some photogrammetry, you can have a surface model that can identify you or allow you to have access to the surface and identify, for example, if an area it's more willing to have floods than another area, then based on that data, then you can rearrange your project to avoid if that flood or that area of land, that plot can actually produce you problems for your construction. Then in the construction phase, what normally is doing is taking some images and then overlap the blueprints in any CAD software or just with some of the solutions that they are already in the market. So based on that overlapping solution, then they can identify if the project as it was planned or as it was designed. If you have a 4D beam, or if you have a specifically software regarding to tracking the progress of the project in 3D or 4D, then you can actually do it. With artificial intelligence, that solution has not yet been developed. In the future, after the drone make the assessment, the artificial intelligence algorithm may be able to identify or quantify how much has been built about XYZ part of the project. Then we have the other part, or the other side, which is about the performance, in which the drone can actually be measuring the performance or recording what the contractor is doing or what is not doing. And then finally, for completion and heritage facility management, the drone is normally used for reconstruction of a bridge and other type of structure in order to reinforce that or make modifications. For infrastructure, there are 8 type of infrastructure projects that they have 13 different type of tasks that you can carry out with drones. These tasks are normally the one that provide value when we have a drone to the architects or engineers that they are looking for solutions for their projects. So this is an example how we can do also visual assessment about a dam, about a waste management area in which they were looking at to make modifications and how they can manage the waste that it was in that place. So this is the differences. In this, it was identify what is the amount, because we have some vegetation, but vegetation does not mean the waste was not covered by the vegetation. So with the surface model, it was identified what was the highest point, the lowest point, where are the most concentration, and where are the areas that the architects and engineer, if they want to regenerate that specific area, where they may be placing the recyclable production or any other type of warehouse to control the waste management in that area. For projects related to buildings, normally taking images and pictures in specific moments of the construction or where the milestones are achieved, they are essential in order to avoid contract dispute and also justify delays or just to measure the productivity of the workers. Normally, these, after you gather all the data through the project, then at the end you can make a project review process and make consideration for future projects. So, in construction industry, we have two major application of drones that is going to be totally worthy to have a drone with, which is related for BIM 4D. When you want to make progress report or tasks that are repetitive through the project, then drones is going to be very useful for that. These are some of the different type of tasks that you can carry out with the drone. And facility management after the project is already built. You're going to have plenty of inspections or repetitive tasks that the drone is going to be most useful and worthy to have one. This is an example of urban planning. It was developed in order to understand what was the social economical status of a specific emerging community, in which it was identified what was the number of houses with low income and high income and the structural construction that they have. If they were built with concrete or if they will be built in wood or any other type of material, then in case of a disaster, what might be the possible mitigation plans for that community. So in terms of productivity, this is one case that it was developed, like 69% of productivity was increased when we use a drone. Normally some works they may take 4 and 6 days and 4 personnel in order to carry out, for example, a survey for a highway, but with the drone we just need 1 day with 1 person making the effort, and then the post-production process is going to take a little bit less. Depends on what is the capability of the organization regarding to computational resources or any other type of machinery or interoperability issues that they may have through the production of the outcome or the management of the data. Then the project can significantly do not have any improvement. But if you have the adequate equipment to receive the outcome of the drones, then the workflow started to be faster than before. So if you are considering to buy a drone or to incorporate the drone within your organization, so you need to identify what type of drone are you going to use or you are willing to buy in order to understand what are the implications of that drone. According to the weight and the country that you're flying the drone in the operation, there are going to be different variables that they're going to attach with the drone. Drones more than 2 kilograms sometimes can be considered as a drone that can cause significantly harm for people who are below or down or on the earth while the drone is operating. So based on that particular case, then some certifications and qualifications are going to be required in order to promote safety on operation. Then if the drone is going to be able to operate autonomously, manual or semi-autonomous, they're going to have different type of considerations according to the price. Then risk assessment and qualification method according to the operation. If the person needs, for example, a specific certification for thermal imaging, and then the thermal imaging is going to be operated in a congested area, for example, in a very, very populated city, China, Beijing, or any other very congested city, then some consideration they have to take into account before operating the drone. And finally, what is the distance? How big is going to be the project? And according to that distance, then you can have different type of or category of drone to operate that site. So it's going to cost you more or less according to the extent of land are you going to be surveying. So based on these four major components, then you're going to have the business model. If it's going to be more suitable to have one contractor doing the work of a drone, or incorporate in your own construction site. If you're going to have more than 10, 20 operations per year about the drone or collecting data, then it's going to be most than welcome to have a drone in your construction site. If not, it's strongly recommend to have a better contractor doing that work for you. If you're looking for some more futuristic approach, then if we incorporate blockchain, VR, and other type of technology, smart contracts, digital twin, cloud computing, then drones can just operate by themselves autonomously, and based on what they put in the smart contract as an input, then the artificial intelligence software can identify the progress and then provide payment to the contractors if everything is carried out appropriately. Well, this is a little bit more futuristic, but in case that happen, then we need to understand what is the role of humans there, and what actually are the contribution of drones to make progress reports and to provide more information about what has been done and where the investment has been put on. About the industry of drones is emerging still. In some countries, they do not have standards about how should be presented the outcomes, and it happens all over the world. It's not only in United Kingdom or United States, it's still happening in other developing and non-developing countries. Currently, there are some service providers, some enterprise that they are just designated from that, and the standards the industry is putting by itself. So some other organizations that you can see in the map, they may exist. There are others that may disappear. So the ones that are still alive, they can provide you software solutions or specialized solutions regarding to drones, that they may have their own standards of operation, or they may recommend how you can operate the drone specifically. So if you want to adopt the drone within your organization, first we need to understand what are the social and technical implications. We need to understand what are the political system in that country, if they have any law or regulation against a specific part of the drone or a specific drone manufacturer or the country that the drone may come. And based on those regulations, then we can see if our council or in our delimitation of area, do they have any concern regarding where to deploy the drone, who's liable for any inconvenience that may happen, or if that area have a restrictions regarding to operate close to XYZ building. After we identify these two major problems to operate the drone, then we can carry out with the business. If we're going to operate just internally or externally, and what might be all the implications that we're going to face regarding to cost-effective solution. Then we have the human resources. Who's going to be the person who's going to operate the drone? It's going to be the site engineer, or might be someone else, might be the architect, might be someone who have a qualification level 3. Depends who's going to be operating the drone. Then we need to qualify that person and make sure that that person complies with the actual safety standards of operation. Then in the technical side, we have the airspace system, in which each airspace, they have their own regulation and restrictions. Might be some airspace may be restricted based on political reasons or any other type of reasons. So based on those reasons, we need to understand where we can fly and where not. Then we have the construction system, or the companies that can actually fly the drone in a specific site, or what are the technical implications to have a drone for a specific site. If they need to ask for permission legally from construction organization, or the person who's operating the drone needs a permission to operate the drone in a specific sense. Then we have the technological resources, like what type of drones, what all the technology that we're gonna need. If we're gonna need extra technology, for example, on cloud services, or we're gonna need blockchain technology or any other type of technology in order to comply with what actually we are requiring for our drone operations. And finally, the task and workflow. What are the purpose that we're going to use? Do we have the right personnel and the right technology to comply with all the requirements for the workflow that we're intending to change? And based on that, we have a loop of changes that every year, every 3 years, every 5 years, regulations, drone designs, manufacturers, methodologies, software may totally change. So based on that changes, we may be aware of them and may proceed with the cycle to renew our license or renew our devices or make some changes in our processes. This is an example, for example, where we can identify knowledge in our community. This is, for example, in the Dominican Republic, a developing country, in which the community built their own drones pilots, providing them courses and knowledge how they can operate the drone, and how the trend since the regulation started. So in your organization, in your country, you may find a drone community in which you can join in, and they can provide you knowledge about how they can operate drones, what are the implications, and things that are related to photogrammetry, techniques, and anything else. So after that, there are going to be some challenges that we need to overcome. As mentioned before, privacy concerns, regulations, weight of the drone, consistency, human behavior, radio frequency. There are some countries that drone cannot operate under specific radio frequencies, or drones may not be able to operate in beyond visual life on sign, so they cannot operate beyond what you actually can see it. So those restrictions, they're going to be enforcing what type of operation you can actually do with a specific type of drones. So for construction or the built environment, there are 4 regulations that we need to have that in mind, which are related to real estate. To understand the land measurements regulation, if you're going to use the drone for surveys, what are the accuracy that is tolerated to make a land measurement or a legal land measurement. Based on that tolerance, then your survey may or may not be accepted by your government body. Then if you have a workflow related to BIM, if you have BIM as a mandate or just BIM as an internal capability that your organization have, so based on that regulation, then you can adopt the drone easily, or you need to put in place different regulation in order to get within that stage. In infrastructure, it's going to depend the photogrammetry, the software, all the facilities, and what are the standards. Some, for example, governments, they have a standard how how many times should be inspected a bridge or inspected infrastructure. So based on that regulation, then the inspection with drones should be a new type of inspection that can be doing more often, or can just gather more data to provide more reliable evidence that the bridge is okay, or the dam is okay, or they need further reparation. In urban planning, it's more about safety. If you fly in congested area, just make sure that radio frequency is okay, and regulations regarding to the design and also the operation. If a drone weighs more than 2 kilograms, you should have different safety measurements to mitigate problems if the drone fails or something happens. Finally, in disaster management, there are some frameworks for risk reduction and crisis management. So how drones should be operated after a disaster, after a tsunami, or after a flood, or after a earthquake, if the construction organization, they're entitled to fly, or they need to wait until until a moment to operate in that area. Sometimes after disaster, what happens is there are plenty of helicopters, international aids, or any other type of body assessing the area. So drones flying in that particular area might be your private land space, but the airspace is totally different. So based on those inconveniences that we may face, then we need to understand what are the implications in legal issues. So in conclusion, drones can be used for surveying, progress report, BIM 4D, urban planning, rough counting, and facility management. And those applications are totally welcoming the drone, and actually can produce high standards in digital practice for construction. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, just let me know, and I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.